For a young person, it is almost a sin, or at least a danger, to be too preoccupied with himself, but for the aging person, it is a duty and a necessity to devote serious attention to himself, who has fully realized that history is not contained in thick books but lives in our very blood. It is a fact that cannot be denied. The wickedness of others becomes our own wickedness because it kindles something evil in our own hearts. Follow that will and that way which experience confirms to be your own. Great talents are the most lovely and often the most dangerous fruits on the tree of humanity. They hang upon the most slender twigs that are easily snapped off. The word belief is a difficult thing for me. I don't believe. I must have a reason for a certain hypothesis. Either I know a thing, and then I know it, I don't need to believe it. Nobody, as long as he moves about among the chaotic currents of life, is without trouble. Resistance to the organized mass can be effected only by the man who is as well organized in his individuality as the mass itself. Man is not a machine that can be remodeled for quite other purposes as occasion demands, in the hope that it will go on functioning as regularly as before but in a quite different way. He carries his whole history with him. In his very structure is written the history of mankind. The Christian missionary may preach the gospel to the poor naked heathen, but the spiritual heathen who populate Europe have as yet heard nothing of Christianity. Understanding does not cure evil, but it is a definite help, inasmuch as one can cope with a comprehensible darkness. Our heart glows, and secret unrest gnaws at the root of our being. Dealing with the unconscious has become a question of life for us. In my case, Pilgrim's Progress consisted in my having to climb down 1,000 ladders until I could reach out my hand to the little clod of earth that I am. All the works of man have their origin in creative fantasy. What right have we then to depreciate imagination? A scream is always just that, a noise and not music. We deem those happy who from the experience of life have learned to bear its ills without being overcome by them. Without this playing with fantasy, no creative work has ever yet come to birth. The debt we owe to the play of the imagination is incalculable. A psychoneurosis must be understood, ultimately, as the suffering of a soul which has not discovered its meaning. Sometimes, indeed, there is such a discrepancy between a genius and his human qualities that one has to ask oneself whether a little less talent might not have been better. The Christ symbol is of the greatest importance for psychology insofar as it is perhaps the most highly developed and differentiated symbol of the self, apart from the figure of the Buddha. In the child, consciousness rises out of the depths of unconscious psychic life, at first like separate islands, which gradually unite to form a continent, a continuous land mass of consciousness. Progressive mental development means, in effect, extension of consciousness. Shrinking away from death is something unhealthy and abnormal which robs the second half of life of its purpose. Grounded in the natural philosophy of the Middle Ages, alchemy formed a bridge, on the one hand into the past, to Gnosticism, and on the other into the future, to the modern psychology of the unconscious. We are in a far better position to observe instincts in animals or in primitives than in ourselves. This is due to the fact that we have grown accustomed to scrutinizing our own actions and to seeking rational explanations for them. Everyone knows nowadays that people have complexes. What is not so well known, though far more important theoretically, is that complexes can have us. The wine of youth does not always clear with advancing years, sometimes it grows turbid. Just as we might take Darwin as an example of the normal extroverted thinking type, the normal introverted thinking type could be represented by Kant. The one speaks with facts, the other relies on the subjective factor. Darwin ranges over the wide field of objective reality, Kant restricts himself to a critique of knowledge.